Hey there, Lisa here. Welcome to my channel. I hope you'll join me in my love of crafting and DIYs and hit that subscribe button. For today's video, we are going tiny, and this is part of the Your Take on Tiny Treasures collaboration hosted by Nancy at Little Treasures by Nancy and Geri at A Happy Hoarder. Be sure to check these ladies out. They do tiny very, very well. Their channels will be down below in my description box. There's also a playlist of other creators making tiny items, so be sure to check that out. Also linked in my description box for all of your tiny inspiration. Now let's get started. Supplies list was a little bit hard to put together for this because there were layers inside the book of supplies that I didn't end up really needing. But these are the supplies that I think if you were going to do this with the suggestions I made that you would want to put together. So you will need a hardback book. I picked this up at the Dollar Tree, a razor knife, ruler, Mod Podge, paintbrush, plastic bottle. I would say the thinner the better. Hot glue gun, fast food drink carrier. This worked really great, or cardboard would work as well. Moss, rocks, sticks, stencils or vinyl or markers, and then photos. The first thing I did was take a ruler and draw a square out of the middle of my book. And then I took a razor blade and sliced through the pages. You would only get several pages at a time, so this was a little bit time consuming. Also extremely messy. Pay close attention when you get to the end here because I did cut through the spine of the book. So I did have to fix this. Theoretically, you would have taken my advice and can skip this portion. But how I fixed it was I just took some Gorilla Tape and taped it over there. The slice in the back of the book was so tiny, I wasn't really all that concerned about it. But we could hit it with like a dab of Mod Podge or something, which is what we do next. Next, you will Mod Podge it closed. So we're going to apply very liberally, Mod Podge all the way around. And I did the outer edges, the top, and then the inner edges as well. And then once that dried, I went back and applied a second coat as well. So I have layers upon layers inside this book. I've never done anything like this before, so I didn't really know what I was getting into and kind of just made it up as I went. I went ahead and left this footage in here because it might be a really cool way to do this if you were going to build up the sides like you were looking down at a creek bottom. So I did take my kids' sand. You could just get sand somewhere, but it was pouring down rain. So I just used some of their kinetic sand and I just sandwiched it between some contact paper and then cut it out in the shape of a creek. And then I glued it inside the book and then glued rocks on top. And then I took pieces of a plastic water bottle and I cut and I applied some hot glue on it and it sort of would melt it just a smidge. And then I would glue it down on top of the rocks. Now, I'm guessing if you had your glue gun on low, it might not melt the plastic, which would also be okay. I honestly don't know. It's probably not super healthy to melt this plastic, but you know, I'm still here to tell the tale. And then I took this drink carrier. This ended up being just the perfect material for this, but you could use some cardboard as well. I took and fit it down inside the book around the edge of the creek. And then I hot glued it down. And then I took and around the edge of the creek, I hot glued this Spanish moss. Again, I have layers upon layers because I end up wanting it taller. And so some of this ends up getting covered up. But again, I just kind of left it in there for different ideas. And then I go ahead and start applying moss around the edges of the creek. I tried some spray glue, but I wasn't loving it. Hot glue just seemed to be what worked best for me. And then I felt like the creek wasn't standing out enough. So I took more of that drink carrier stuff and cut it down into strips. And then in some places, I built it up a little higher and glued that in around the creek. Like I said, I mean, I did so many layers because I was learning as I went. But then I decided that I was going to put these pebbles to make the ground look sort of bumpy. And so I put those pebbles in there. I add more more of the cut water bottle and more hot glue for more water. It's sort of really hard to give you like a step-by-step process because I winged it, you know, and I would just glue stuff where I thought it looked good. And then if I didn't like it, I would go over it again. So once I had the pebbles in and I had decided that I liked the outer edge, I just used a bunch of different types of moss and sort of cut them together and applied those. Once I had it all built up, the fun began, and that was placing the rocks and little sticks that I had trimmed from out of the yard. And then I went through and applied some of this really green moss. And then I printed a couple pictures I had taken. I printed one on just regular paper, and then I printed one on tissue paper. I've never done this, but I double-sided sticky taped a piece of tissue paper to regular printer paper, and it went right through my inkjet and printed on tissue paper, and it is so cool. I'm going to be doing a lot more of that. And then I cut it so that it would fit on the inside cover of the book and right along the edge of my scene there. And then I took and tore the edges. I prefer just to tear it, but I did try to tear it with water here. It's really just your preference. I always end up soaking the tissue paper and getting too much water on, and then the ink smears. So like I said, I just prefer to tear it. But however, I just wanted the edges to be jagged. And then I took Mod Podge and I put a layer down and then put the tissue paper down. And then I did a nice cut over the top. You see there, I ripped a piece, and I probably should have just left it, but I'll show you what I did. And then I took, this is just regular paper, some more hike scenes, photos that I had taken of the forest floor. And so I just cut them and sort of tore the ends and placed them around the edges, just so that it looked like my scene that I had created was extending out onto the edges of the pages. And then this is what I did over the tear. And I don't know, I may have to do something different here, but I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just extend the scene up like it's part of the tree. So I don't know, you guys will have to let me know. Does it look funny? I should just take it out and do something else over that. And then I cut this yellow rectangle to cover the title of the book. And I used the Dollar Tree vinyl, and it's too thin, and so you can see through it. And so that's me going, oh no, now what do I do? So I just took a piece of scrapbook paper and cut it and Mod Podged it over the edge. And then I applied a little something I had done up on my Cricut with just some trees and a creek and some mountains, and then I applied the title of my book, also something I'd done up with my Cricut. This would be easy to do with stencils or letter stickers or transfers. And then I did a good coat of Mod Podge over the top. And then I did the front, and I am so sorry. I lost footage of this. You know, I have hours and hours of footage of me placing pieces of moss and tiny sticks and tiny rocks, but somehow I'm missing the footage doing the front cover of the book. But anyways, I created this on the Cricut, and I cannot get that Dollar Tree vinyl to cut these really tiny letters. So everything is vinyl except the written and illustrated by Mother Nature. I just used what I had cut sort of like a stencil and just used blue Sharpie, and it went on the book really well. If you're super artistic, you could just draw your own cover. All right, so here it is. This is my first attempt at anything mini. I love miniature stuff, and this was really fun. I learned a lot. If I were to do it again, I would say fill up the bottom with something that you don't care about seeing. I did waste a lot of time and a lot of energy on layers in the bottom of the book that you can't even see. Being in nature really is therapeutic for me, as I know it is for many. And especially when there's a creek running through, just the sound of that, there's just nothing like it. So this is my mini happy place that I can take with me or visit when I can't really get out in nature. I would love to hear what you guys think. If you guys are mini creators and have tips or tricks or ideas that would make this simpler, that would be great. All right, I would love to know what you guys think in the comments. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more from me, please hit that subscribe button. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and a happy Memorial Day. Thank you to our servicemen and women for your sacrifice.